Atachi mising chitab kalenjin ketaun tetutiet nebo Kass Mashinani tungeten ketesyet nebo Kass TV en Nairobi ole kainenyun abotunajin Victor Korir ketau tetutiet ketaunen ngalalet nebo CEC nebo mungaret en county nebo Uasin Gishu noto ko Dr. Chebunet ne kakongalalen nenet budget netetat kiasoman en betutab rani en bunge nebo National Assembly lewendi kosoman minister nebo treasury noto ko John Mbadi. Kamwa Chebunet kole tindoi kamangunet kole wendi budget noto kusingong magutik chebo biikab emet mising ko checheket chemiten ngwony en uchumi ak mising kora kokochi boroindo serikali kotestai konyor rabinik chemuch koboisien en kawangunetab tetutik cheterter chebo bandab tai che koketoi en komoswek cheterter chebo emet.
Budget nemiten nguno nenyone ko kikesune boisionik chekikomwa president kole suppose keyai. Barabaret nebo Rironi nengete Rironi agoi Mau Summit kokechop kora nengete Mau Summit agoi Malava ko kikesune choto boisionik chekonget. Kabwate ale kiy tugul ko wendi kotestai komie. Kit ne meche sikonyor shida budget ni ko sai ko wakati nebo siasa. Ko bendi biik koboisie rabisiek eng oret nemakararan. So wananchi komeche konai ole mi boisionik chenyolu keyaiwo. So matorobokchi biik kityo kobe siasa, meche konai ole takomi financially age. So kobendi kandoik makenyoru office chesome kura. So komeche keeku very keen kenai kele budget nebo sai komamite ngalekab wastage. Amu meche president kikes boisionik. Ngele niro finance bill nemite ko kocheng serikali rabisiek. Kochenge komaswek alak makichil mwananchi. Kuchamwae kole meche koba maandamano koba ne kumabwati ngotobwoni amu ngile niro budget ni ko consider the ordinary Kenyan. Kit kityo ko kutokotorte serikali ngalekab mwanik. Kutokotorte ngalekab mwanik amu igere ile yoto ole kichilotin mwanik sai ko 200 aki. So meche kotorte mwanik amu mwaita ko vekteni kiy tugul nekikere kotestai.
Ak testai serikali kosuldaen tetutik chetokyingei kichuchuch alyetab mwanik ole kakomwa minister nebo kimnatosiek Opiyo Wandayi kole tetat kotokechuchuch alyetab mwanikab diesel en betusiek tutikin chemiten tai. Kamwa Wandayi kole bo kamanut mising mwanik chotok en uchumi nebo emet ak kounotok kotinye serikali maket neo nebo koker kole kaker karib biik komatesetai konyolchi kochilak biikab emet kobun alyet nebo sobet netinyegei ak alyetab mwanik. Ng'ololi en tuyet nebo chemung'arainik chechobe tuguk anan manufacturers koyomis Wandayi kole yekibarasta alyetab mwanik en tarikit 14 nebo arawetab 6 kowendi koregu alyetab mwanik chebo diesel.
To cushion businesses and extension households, the government suspended the proposed electricity tariff review. In addition, in this June cycle, electricity costs have reduced by some Kenya shillings 0.2685 per kilowatt hour. This reduction is driven by a significant drop in the forex adjustment component, a decrease in the fuel energy cost, and increased hydropower generation. This reflects our commitment to ensuring that gains within the sector are shared directly with Kenyans. We remain equally committed to supporting productive sectors and lowering the cost of doing business generally, in line with the commitment made by His Excellency the President to the public transport sector and other industry players. The government will ensure a further reduction in the diesel prices in the next monthly review, recognizing that diesel powers transport, agriculture, manufacturing, and the wider economy. Lower diesel prices ultimately translate into lower costs for businesses and is a greater relief for Kenyan families. The concerns raised by industry are both valid and important, and there were many, because energy and production are at the heart of Kenya's economic transformation agenda. Manufacturing remains a critical driver of jobs, exports, and revenue. And we cannot ignore the pressures that rising production costs, cash flow constraints, and increasing global competition place on our industries. As government, our objective is to ensure that energy remains a catalyst for growth by delivering affordable, reliable, and sustainable power that enhances competitiveness rather than undermining it. We recognize that issues with policy alignment have a direct bearing on business viability and investment decisions. That's why we are committed to working closely with industry and relevant agencies to create an enabling environment that safeguards jobs, supports positive cash flow, strengthens purchasing power, promotes exports, and ensures that Kenya remains an attractive destination for manufacturing and industrial enterprise.
Akakotestai terchinet eng kwenutab kompunitab chaik nebo Browns East Africa ak meng'ik kotinygei ak namunetab mbaret nebo Samburet estate nemiten county nebo Kericho. Miten alak en meng'ik chemoche konom mbarenichotok ole mwae kole notok ko kosubkei ak ng'atutiet nekikon kapkirwok ak kotiengei kampunit notok bo Browns kotindoi icheket chomchinet nebo kotestai konom mbaranotok akoi kiwong kirwoket netestai netinye ak namunetab mbaranotok bo ekarishek 1,100. Kinyoru report nebo Robert Siele.
Kong'ololjin sirikab logoiwek en kotab tuyoshek nebo International Training Center ITC en Kapchain komwa nebo ng'echeret en Kenya Thick Rowers Association KTGA Silas Njipwakale kole miten biik chemoingen cho kochutyi mbaretab Samburet Estate nebo Brown East African Plantation kit nemayanat en ng'atutik.
Kuna watu wamekuja wakidai umiliki wa hiyo shamba na wameendelea kuingia kufanya vitu ambayo haviambatane na hali ya usalama. Wameingia ndani, wameanza kukata michanga, miti mikubwa wanaisitoa katika hiyo shamba. Wametoa vitisho kwa wafanyakazi wa kampuni ya BIP kwamba wanataka kulichukua hilo shamba kwa nguvu kwa sababu ni shamba lao, na ilhali kesi bado iko kotini.
Kosubkei ak Njipwakal nekamiten koboto Brown East Africa Plantation ak kampunishek chemiten en kibagengeitab KTGA kokinyor icheket ng'atutiet kobun kapkirwok en kenyitab 2023 nebo kotestai koboisien mbaret kot kowongei kesit nekiib kibagengeitab biik cheite 200 chemaitos mbaranoton bo ekarishek 1,100.
Sisi kama KTGA tunahakikishia wananchi kwamba sisi tulipata court order from appeal court, the highest court. Na hiyo court order tulipata 2023, I think 2023. Na hiyo court order naweza waonyesha, ndio hiyo tuko nayo. Mtu asiseme pengine tunasema maneno ambayo hayako. Hiyo court order ilituruhusu kuendelea na umiliki wa shamba yetu, tuendelee kufanya kazi katika hilo shamba mpaka wakati kesi ambayo ilikuwa katika Land and Environmental Court hapa Kericho itatuliwe.
En kasarta nenekit wikishek oeng chekosirto kobit terchinoshek akobo namunetab mbaranoton ole Dennis Lang'at ko agenge en biik cheindochin biik chekiba kapkirwok komoche konam mbaranoton ole kamwa inendet kole tindoi ng'atutiet nebo konam mbaranoton.
Kong'eten ngokonech kotini chomchinet en last year mwezi wa 7 kokokebwan ireu keyai kasitab boisionik chebo development chebo mbarani kongebwan kotaketinye mafurutano mayoni biikab kampunit komwa konai kole kitinye court order amayoni kora konai kole mbaret kobo biikab Samburet kandochini nekibore Chililek Enterprise.
Sisi kama KTGA tunauliza wale wafamizi wote wenye wako katika shamba letu ya Samburet wasimame ufamizi, twende kotini tumalize kesi, tujue ni nani anasema ukweli.
So kamache amwa en betutab rani ale echek any wenyechi chebo mbaretab Samburet ama mi biik alak ako yekiamwa kora ale mbaretab Samburet komakomiten nafas en mbaretab Samburet. So konoton nekamamwa en betutab rani ale kitesetai kasit kou ele nyolundo bikyuk ichechu chebo kasit. O kitesetai kasit ko ele nyolu.
Kosubkei ak afisayat nebo Corporate Affairs en Browns East African Plantation konamu icheket mbaranatan koboch ng'alalet nekaesho meng'ichoton.
Sambret Estate ni moja ya estates ambazo zinamilikiwa na kampuni ya Browns East Africa Plantations, na hectares ambao tunasema ni 464. Hiyo estate kama zingine zimekuwa operated na kampuni ya Browns East Africa Plantations. Ziko na chai huko, ziko na miti, ziko na shule, ziko na dispensaries, tuko na manyumba ya wafanyikazi ambao wanaishi.
Ako kitinye code order ile ba echek. Kitinye right, kitinye titles, kitinye kila kitu. Kokwamwa kong'eten en kanamet ale chi tugul netinye ng'alek aendani challenge kotini. Matonda keboisien oret nemuche kiulien bikyok kebirgei buch en kit nemomi. Ongebirengei documents chekitinye.
Aripotonyin logoiwekab emet chebo Kass kong'eten county nebo Kericho, kainenyun ko Robert Siele.
Chitab kalenjin kitokchinigei county nebo Kericho kinyoru report nekakochob wesit nenyon nebo logoiwek Robert Siele en betut kimong'u kotokchigei bunge National Assembly Minister nebo Treasury John Mbadi asikosoman budget nebo kenyitab mung'aret nebo 2026-2027. Komong'ei meng'ik chebo county nebo Kericho kokon kerenywan kotinygei ak budget noto bo trillion 4.82 nemiten missing anan neo missing en historia nebo emoni.
En kainutik kekurenon Victor Kiptoyekon, alen netai amache ale en budget nebo raini nesomanwech Mbadi CS nebo finance kokikere kowo barak ine. Budget nekonde nguni ko kowo barak en ingeker en historia nebo Kenya kong'eten independent 1963. Lakini kong'et nguni ko population en Kenya ak constitution nekinye 2010 ko makergei ak nikibo olikinye. Kemwoe kele budget ini ko kowo barak en maisha nebo nguni nebo binadamu, lakini komabatei ki en boriet netesetai en Middle East ko affecten ng'alek chebo budget nguni. So kisome kele kokisome kityo rais nenyon William kokerwech ng'alekab sekta nebo kabatisiet, sekta nebo mwanik ak koboswech en budget inoto konde rabinik chechang budget nebo kabatisiet ak sekta nebo transport. So en budget nombo Mbadi raini nesomani saa 9 nebo jioni kemwoe kongoi bwana rais ngamun ingen rabinik chon kowekyingei wananchi chemi ngweny. Ak en ng'alekab temisiet, ng'alekab sukulisiek kora, en ng'alekab capitation. Capitation ko kakimoche itesyi ng'alekab capitation kora bwana rais. Nibu kakitach budget inon ngamun kikere ne kachilech lakini mami kit nenyone komayak komami rabinik. Moikete emoni koma rabinik. So kongoi bwana rais ako kitoche budget inon en betutab raini. Thank you so much.
En kainutik kyuk ko Nicholas meng'indetab Kericho ako abunu side nebo Kipkelion West Chilchila. Kinamwa en budget ini ko kisome rais mwenyewe en ng'alekab transport ine sana kama kamasita ko chilech. Kabare kekere en budget nasomanu tonyolu ngunon ko budget saiti koteswech amun kokechilake. Komami kit neketesyini kitoche budget non komie ak kemwa bwana rais ikere emet ak ibwatech. Kongoi.
Alen netai awekche kongoi en nafasi nekaranyoru en ng'alekab budget. Ng'alekab budget iman ko ng'alekab budget en nguni ko kokoromit nia osotoin kakiteswech mwanik ko koromit kasit nebo kwong'et. En ng'alekab ikere ngunon ku kong'eten ngele ming'inetonyun tugul kotom kwai kwo barak diesel kosir petrol. Noton kwakere ale kakokoromit kora. As ng'alekab imbar sana keboisien ng'alekab petrol diesel. Diesel ngunon ko sitemisie ko lazima ikur tinget ako tinget ko noton boisien diesel. Ko yekakoit tinget imbar ko ingen ile mi beit barak. Ko yekakwo beit barak ko ikere oin kele kokakenyoru man ng'alekab chakula ko matokoyai ng'alekab kimyet, lakini kakwo barak diesel ikere ile ko next ko kakokali kimyet kora. Makiomisie kokakibur komie. So ng'alekab president siker ng'alekab mwanik chon iboswech ak iker ng'alekab imbar. Ikere kunon ku ng'alekab mwanik kotitese mwanik kong'et serikali akichek obos mushara chuonome Suwon ka balance ngalekab mwanik. Kototeswe kityo ngalekab mwanik amu bose musiara ko mami kiy nekotorete kora. Nyolu obosigei musiara asikebwa line. Ale matite ngalek chechang kongoi.
Kainutik kekuron Amasi Chemwetich. Lenen ngalechu bo budget kokeusak kai mising. Kokeusak kong'etas mwanik kokomach kouit kidogo sobet. Nguni ninam pikipiki en town ot kile kelany ot boda ko kali nea. Haya kakibare kekeren ngebe ngalekab chakula ko kali korokoro. Nguni en olinyonet kialen 160 170. Ngalekab mwaitab ingwek en litait nguni komure 350 shillings. Ikere ile kakouit kakeusak mising. So ndabotunen ino en ngalechu bo budget kotakeboswe kidogo kakeumia kokiraya. Kongoi.
Kwa jina naitwa John Mkanzi. Mimi kama mkazi wa Kenya na raia wa Kenya, kwa kusema ukweli, mambo ya budget imetufinya sisi kama raia zaidi. Jambo la kwanza, ukiangalia gharama ya maisha imeenda juu zaidi. Unapata vitu zinaongezeka, lakini raia wa kawaida hakuna pesa, mshahara waongezewi. Serikali imezidi kutufinya zaidi. Mimi kwa maoni yangu ningesema hivi, tafadhali wakiongeza vitu pia waongezee raia pesa. Juu kama raia hana pesa ataishi namna gani? Wakiongeza kila kitu kinapoongeza, wajue binadamu raia wa chini kabisa anafinyika kuliko hao wenye wako juu. Tukiangalia zaidi, serikali inazidi kufinya raia wa chini kuliko vyenye wao wako juu. Kwa hivyo ningeomba wakati wataongea kuhusu hii budget ya kesho ama siku hii budget inayokuja hii, tafadhali angalia raia wa chini kuliko kuangalia ule yako juu. Sina maoni mengine, ni hayo tu.
Mimi kwa majina naitwa Jackson Momanyi. Mimi ni mkazi wa Kericho. Maneno ya budget ya Kenya, tunaona budget wanasoma leo, lakini mwananchi wa chini amefinywa sana. Kwa sababu mwananchi wa chini sisi ndio tunachagua serikali. Lakini mwenye wako huko juu, unajua wao wanapokea mshahara na wao wanajichunga, lakini sisi tuko chini wanatufinya. Kwa hivyo mimi naonelea budget yenye wanasoma waangalie mwananchi. Tukiwa sawa chini, wakituangalia vizuri, wakituchunga, mambo yote itakuwa sawa. Kwa hivyo budget wanasoma, mahali niliangalia kuna kipengele ya maneno ya shule, hapo niliona wameweka ni sawa. Maneno ya hospitali waliweka hiyo ni sawa. Lakini sasa mwananchi wa chini, maneno ya chakula watuangalie, kwa sababu tusipoangalia wa chini tutaumia na watoto wetu hawatasoma, kwa sababu tutakosa yenye tunafanya, kwa sababu tunafinywa maisha chini. Sasa pesa itakosa ya kupeleka mtoto shule. Uangalie hiyo, wakichunga hapo naona maneno itakuwa sawa sawa. Kwa hiyo mimi nashukuru sana, kwa sababu budget ambayo tulikuwa tunatumia nyuma tumeitumia kwa muda mrefu sana, lakini hii yenye inakuja tunaomba waangalie vizuri, kwa sababu hii itatupeleka mbali. Kwa hivyo mimi naheshimu rais wetu kwa sababu ya maneno ambayo anapanga, anatupangia Kenya hapa ni mambo mazuri. Lakini walio chini, wakati rais analisi pesa, walio chini wao ndio wanafinya hiyo pesa. Wakifanya vile rais wetu anapanga maneno, mambo itakuwa sawa sawa. Kwa hivyo nashukuru sana.
Kainutik ko David Ruto, ameng'indetab Kericho ako budget facilitator nebo komositab Kericho County. Keboisie ak biik chekuren Budget Hub ak Uraya Trust ak other organizations chetinye interest en ng'alekab budget. So en Kericho yu ketindoi budget champion chechang che kokakiker budget nebo nguni. Ko ngeker budget kekere ko mami makosa missing amun kokinyigis komoswek chenyolu chebo somanet, kokinyigis kora komostab tililindo health, kekere komaya. Kitutyo nekiker komi barak budget inon, ngeker ko budget ko korom en the deficit komi barak. Niker deficit nebo ngunon en budget ininyon keng'ololen 1.1 trillion. 1.1 trillion ng'alekab deficit, rabinik cherorunotin en budget chekobo barak. Kotogu konyo straineni kora biikab emet kenyor rabinik choton. Ako ngele kakiboroen ngoba barak budget asiboroen ko echek kora chenyo keliponi deni noton. Ikere ngunon en budget inon kakile budget rabinik chekibeseni ko 1.1 trillion. Ko nginem en 3.8 trillion. Ke ngolole nyolu ketindoi budget nebo 3.7 trillion. Ne nyolu le kimuche kemiten komokibesen. Ko noker ane ko takomi oret age ne kimuche kebos budget inon, kebos komoswek choma essential services chema very critical. Ndakibosot ngalekab infrastructures, mi infrastructure chekere ile mara ko urgent. So en ane noker sikobit komanyor biikab emet nyigisindo ko atakibose borrowing. Borrowing no kora kotok kele borrowing kora serikali niker komosta neo kabese serikali about 953 billion from the domestic market. Ko ngebese rabinik en domestic serikali amun kele benkishek ko sure en nebo serikali ko bese serikali rabinik benkishek chebo Kenya. Ko koen benkishek serikali amun ngen kole liponi. Kor komakosiche biik chekoe biashara rabishek chebeseni en benkishek sikoen biashara. Ko yoton le kekere kele kokotoret in uchumi. Ikere ngunon private sector neo korilonen loan asikobit konyorin rabishek cheyoen biashara. Ko yekakonyo serikali konyo kofomionji kobesenin rabishek en local market. Ko kakobar ngalekab uchumi. Kakobar ngalekab kakoumisan local business people komakosiche rabishek che investeni sikobit employment. Amun employment nguni nibare gen kandelelen serikali kotesat in employment ko eleo en biik chekisire komi private sector, mi business. Ko kakere ale kanyolu ko eita konget kobose serikali more from the outside external borrowing asikobut kokoi benkishek nafasi kokoi biikab biashara in loan. En budget inon kora ko kaker maker komosta nekanyigisok en ngalekab environment. Moeku sure en environment kanyolu kinde taban kora rabishek ke identify natin areaishek
Kitab kalenjin ngeten Kericho keuge Nairobi ketokchinigei ofisiek choto chebo Ministry nebo Finance and Treasury Building in Nairobi le kaimuch ngalal sirikab logoiwek minister nebo rabisiek noto ko John Badi eng konunetab rani eng kasarta netestai kochopchingei inendet kotokchigei bunge noto kobo kosoman budget nebo kenyitab 2026-2027.
From 30th of April to date, what maybe Kenyans will be listening to is the details of these revenue raising measures and budget highlights. So there is really no surprises. Just giving more details on what it is that is in the budget estimates.
All right, so yeah, Waziri, this is your second budget as the Cabinet Secretary for the National Treasury. When you look at your first budget and this second budget, how difficult or how easy has this one been?
Well, there is no easy budget. In fact, this year's budget is even informed by a number of challenges, one of which is the external shock that we are facing. You know, now we have a war in the Middle East, and that war is completely disrupting the world economy. And so we are preparing this budget in the backdrop of a major external shock, what is close to be called world war. And so there are a lot of uncertainties, and again, underperformance in revenue collection, the rising inflation, that's a major thing because we are preparing a budget at a time when the inflation is rising. Last year it was different. Inflation was contained. Today it is rising. So this budget is more challenging.
All right, for a lot of Kenyans, they'll be looking at some of the food commodity prices that will be brought down. But the question that I want you to know, in terms of the sectors that could generate a lot of economic activity, a lot of jobs, are you doing something around that?
Yeah, of course we are investing quite significantly in agriculture as the backbone of our economy. Remember, agriculture is also largely devolved, and I think that is also something that we are missing in our discussions when we talk about underfunding agriculture. Agriculture is heavily devolved, but the government is coming up with interventions to support a number of crops, both for food consumption and exports. Like tea, you can see in the past 2-3 years, government has invested a lot in the tea sector. We have also invested a lot in the revival of the coffee sector. We have invested a lot in edible oil, and I will speak to that in Parliament. We have also invested a lot now in sugar reforms and many other crops. But again, in food production, you can see the efforts that the government has put in terms of subsidy, fertilizer subsidy, provision of seeds has helped us in increasing the quantity or the amount of food or maize, which is our staple food. The production of maize has gone up. Well, we have also been lucky that the weather has been favorable, but the government intervention is clearly visible and evident.
All right, so
that is for us.
Yeah, one final question from me, Waziri, is when you look at just looking at the funding of this budget, the revenue underperformance is still a major headache. What is your plan around that?
Revenue performance is still a big challenge, and it is informed by a number of factors. One of them is the inefficiency at the KRA that cannot be wished away, but there have also been some challenges in terms of tax administration. I will point out that our tax administration has challenges because the business has moved from the normal traditional way to more into again informal sector, and besides that there has also been the movement towards the digital economy. And so we are doing a lot of reforms. In the supplementary budget that we prepared, we had allocation for KRA to do reforms, to carry out reforms, about 17 billion. And a lot of reforms are happening at the KRA, and I'm sure then in the next, the coming financial year, KRA will be able to collect more without raising tax rates. And if you look at my finance bill that I presented to Parliament, it's heavy on reforms and tax administration as opposed to raising tax rates, contrary to what others have been saying. Yes, my friend.
Waziri, thank you very much. I know you touched a bit on agriculture. There are quite a number of is one of them. You're cutting almost 10 billion shillings from there. Energy is one of the major cuts also that you've seen, almost 72 billion. Can you talk to us about this? But education, actually one of the biggest bumps also on the other side, are getting a huge, allocation. Talk to me about this balancing act that you have to consider when you're making this particular budget.
We have tried to maintain most of the provisions under the agriculture sector, no major cuts. I will tell you in the fertilizer subsidy, we have maintained almost the same amount of 18 billion. We have also maintained almost similar amount in sugar reforms at 2.5. Yes, we have reduced a bit. Parliament actually cut the coffee cherry, but I think we need to put a little more on the coffee debt because that is where money is needed. We had provided for 1 billion was cut from the coffee cherry, and I thought it would be put under the debt, but Parliament in its own wisdom decided to reallocate the fund elsewhere. We are also putting more resources in providing coffee seeds, and so we have not really underfunded the agriculture budget. But energy, you are right. Energy, we did an assessment and we came to a conclusion that a number of projects and programs, this is a zero-based budget. We have started implementing zero-based budget where you justify every shilling that you are asking from the national coffers. So when we looked at the energy sector, we realized a number of projects are actually commercially viable, and that is why we started the National Infrastructure Fund. So we have taken them out of the budget, not that they are not going to be funded, but they are going to be funded differently by applying the National Infrastructure Fund and PPP program. So the energy sector will still be funded heavily, but away out of our budget.
And lastly from me,
Testai chitab kolenjin ketokchinigei taonitab Eldoret asikenyorun ng'alalet nebo agenge ak CPA Alton Kogo kong'ololi ak Isaac Kogei kong'ololi akobo budget nitobo kenyini asikotieme koarorwech akobo elekerto CPA Kogo budget netetat kesoman en koskoleng'utab rani.
TV TV kole komwa kemi eng komasta noton nebo Eldoret ako eng betutab rani ko betut neo mising noton nebo budget. Ako yekere eng screen ngung kemite koboto CPA Alton Kogo asikobit koruruny mising kotinygei ak budget noton nebo kenyitab 2025 ne komatya kesomanu eng bunge noton nebo National Assembly CS noton nebo Treasury nenet ko John Mbadi. Mantos Alton amache atachini ketesiet noton nebo Kass imwawech kityo eng nwokindo une panganutik anan tetutik chotok chebo betutab rani ako kerutikuk ko ne eng budget noton nebo kenyitab 2025.
Kongei kainenyu ko CPA Alton Kogo. Amache amwa kongoi amu baraindo nekakenyoru sikobit kemwa akobo ng'alekab budget. Amache kityo akorektan kongei ale budget nebo 2026-2027 ama 2025 ko kiketar imi nguno kebendi tai. So this budget ko very important in serikalitab Kenya aswa President Arap Ruto amu kikure legacy budget newendi ko implementani ng'alek chechang chebo president chekikamwa eng manifesto nenyi nebo 2022 amu ngiro kasarta nguno komite lala salama towards election nebo 2027. So this budget ko very critical in the implementation of the bottom-up economic transformation agenda nebo president. It is the biggest budget in Kenya, ngap Kenya Uhuru, a budget of 4.8 trillion. Ki wendi kosomani CS FCPA Mbadi betutab rani. Ago it is the biggest budget in emetab Kenya. Kongetke Uhuru 4.8 trillion. Budget no million budget no Kenya kotinye the biggest budget in East Africa. Ngicombine na emotinwek tugul chebo East Africa, mami budget nebo emet age tugul neityin emetab Kenya. Reason ko amu Kenya ko one country nekiko developing. Kikende tuguk chechang ng'alekab infrastructure ak ng'alekab economic growth. Kenya co-financed this budget through local collections, revenues chemeche sike collectane, lakini mite deficit nebo 1.1 trillion. Project on KRA, project and CS Mbadi kole, and this budget kebendi ke financani 3.6 trillion, sorry, ak our own source collection, revenue chemeche ko collectan KRA. So meje siro nguno ngalekab ke collections chebo KRA ke projectani kosir komi sai agoi 3.6 trillion. So that tells you there is a deficit of 1.1 trillion kongetke what we are budgeting and what we are able to collect. Ka project and bali kole ke aigi negile tax base expansion. Yani ke increase ngalekab tax base, koliban chitugul tax, koliban bike jang tax, ke increase base nebo tax. Number 2, kabaishe ki negile zero based budgeting. In Kenya nguno ko normally tep kia negile incremental budgeting. For the past ongete ko kikiai budgeting nenyo ke ai ngaleka process tugul chebo budget kia process negile incremental budgeting. Incremental budgeting ko genam expenses chebo, for example, Ministry of Education last year gele kiata ke increase kidogo. Kaya chapa roads kele giata ke increase kidogo. Lakini this year ko kiai ke negle zero based budgeting, a very important tool negi justify ni expenses. Mailing gityo gende gityo gele education go this amount. This department MSMEs go this amount. So zero based budgeting ko nego boishe kenyini ako very important ako waziri Mbadi FCPA Mbadi ko propone no ne push ngalek zero based budgeting. So in zero based budgeting ko nyige ngololya gele expenses chekwok chebo every department kwata or justify or mwa in details ole budget nega kimwa ko 600 billion for example, and then from there or justify before getting the budget ka priorities and serikali in this budget kuya maji sake kas ko somani waziri afternoon sectors karibu moot all of them go be within the bottom up economic transformation agenda. Number 1 ko gende education je kondo kajang karibu 784 billion kutoka kwa Ministry of Education. So kebwa ngaleka health ka prioritize angora health karibu 175 billion, kebwa affordable housing ke improve infrastructure of housing ko gende je kondo kajang number 3 kebwa ngaleka security kora gende je kondo kajang karibu 566 billion. Ginyo nebe education ko ka changa chepkondo jwa mune amu mite mwalimuinik karibu 20,000 chemeche kesir koba PNP. So mwalimuinik cha komite interns cho kele komeche kole president kongoi amu ngende budget nengwanget so education kwa barak koit 784 billion kwamu kakiconsider lagochu 20,000 chekikesir, lakini nguno kale meche keconsider kende koek permanent and pensionable. That is why sikere kamwa barak. Number 2, komite issue nebo MSMEs, rabinik chechang kora chekakinde ngalekab MSMEs, keai ngalekab credit guarantee schemes, keba ngalekab nyota chekikiyoe last year, komi chepkondok chekakinde, kebe ngalekab infrastructure development, komi chepkondok chekakinde ngalekab MSMEs, kebe ngalekab affordable housing, komi ngalek chepkondok chekakinde. So in kerenyu ko this is a very important step nekatakan Kenya koek bold enough kemakan that bold decision agele makoyamech ke service and budget nenyo ngot kemeche ke grow kapsa kebe Singapore kuya mwa president ko lazima ke bite the bullet agetiech kapsa tai through our budget ke supporting your president through ke supporting president through ke expand the tax base ngoliman chitukul tax ke money yeah there is any 3.6 billion and even more. There is a big potential. There is need to do reforms in KRA so kopit koistage loopholes chebo revenue collection. Amungo ngot ke muji ke collect 3.6 billion kolejeni ndata gejile kidogo melen ke taxan big lakini ke closen loopholes chemite KRA loopholes chemite revenue collection ke muji ke achieve even up to more. Kende ngaleka ko finance and the deficit of course through borrowing. External and domestic borrowing 1.1 trillion now. But in this budget there are some things lasma go clear billion kawabarak budget ni missing kuya mwa bigala mite de need na lasma geleban ingen guna ile ga jemet ab Kenya jeb kondo kajang debt nebo ne ga jemet ab Kenya go ago ngoit petu tab de need ko lasma gelia keleban we cannot pay ngomaginde budget so kaginde budget jeb kondo kajang 1.2 trillion chekibendi kityo geleban de need. So, in essence, it is not that it's a very big budget. Lakini orit yuto, melena ko recurrent expenses ya ngalale jaglen uya kakiteshi mshahara bigala kanang kokalia no. Mi de need ne mi emet ab Kenya ne kigesam kwanget ke 1963 ago tesetai. Yeah, serikali chek tugul je ko melen go taw serikali ne bara bruta ko same lakini ko a very good government arab serikali ne ago a good president arab bruta ago prioritize an kya ikinde gile ke honan debt repayment. So maybe we can still do analysis after the budget kage saman. We were very specific and which sector specifically, but we are very hopeful that this budget is going to support implementation of priority sectors. Checking one president, Kauti roads and infrastructure. I think like 211 billion. Committed this budget. Chebendikiti roads. Agi ngalale president barabara ne mawat. Diregune ne Mau Summit Road. Committed already at budget na 211 billion komelen chep kondo kidogo. So
kajo budget ne kasarta noto ne kai monge chongdo bigabe met ako magole pune window missing nebo sabet missing ko kaba barak ngalekab mwanik ko kaba barak missing ngalekab amitwogik. Man tos imanishan ne mwananchi tos kachobok mwananchi koboryo agi kakasoman eng betutab rani ako chobok kojer anan ko mangalekab ushuru.
Number 1 imagine ile ne nagai economy ko wit kit nagai economy ko wit ko melen mi singa ko Kenya. It's a global crisis ne mite emetab Kenya. You see when fuel is expensive the ripple effect ko ngot komi borge ne mite emetab ran the supply ni 22% nebo mwanikab emet tugul awaga ko garle bune mwanik kole masikin ko to ba mwanik emet ko monisha ni kole sigenyoru mwaita en Kenya ko yache kelipan additional cost. That means by paying additional cost in fuel kotese beitab chakula kotese gharama nebo consumable products kotese gharama nebo tuguk chechang chebo emetab Kenya. Lende kongias president ai amut ko ngalali in which country was it Finland not Finland emet ne ko kawo yes yes ko ngalali ak shippers kotieme ko cheng avenue ne ibu rahisi mwaita because kawit maisha kogei critically because the global factors chemite dunia tokol ko contribute no missing issue of fuel. It cannot be isolated to Kenya alone. It is a global issue na lazima kefacen ako president kokimwa kong'ete kole makoi supporten issue nebo subsidy in consumption. Subsidy on consumption ko very risky. That's why the president has been working on subsidy on production. Kekochi subsidy mkulima, for example nebo pandek, kwale fertilizer chechike 2500 nakata 7500. So through that we are subsidizing production as a government. Subsidizing production so kabit ko produce mkulima nemi Moiben, mkulima nemi Baringo, mkulima nemi Kericho ko produce chakula kwa changa. So kabit keigu food secure korok as a nation. So subsidizing consumption is not a very good aspect nebo case economy nebo Kenya. Ngot kebe that avenue ko likely ke some. You see, we will be borrowing nyike subsidizing ku previous governments, and the president has been so bold ko facen directly gole mo ange some chepkondok mo ange be chumbe ke some loan atienye ke subsidizing consumption nyike tel mwani kele nakata kele mwani 211 shillings kwa gone America 100 billion nge reduce lakini deni. I want to say thank you to the president on that aspect alone, because let us focus on subsidizing production. Ge producing, ge goji mkulima go producing, ge goji factories go producing, ge goji tax incentives production jeba local products age supporting manufacturing. I expect that in our future budgets can there more resources on manufacturing. You see, when we manufacture our own products in Kenya, ko manisha nikola magote ke relan ke importen itu ku kejang because ke importen ko expensive dollar. Karama tukchota ke important. Like when we work in a way that we are producing our own products in Kenya, kota retiagot budget because magoi take important all these products. So mwananchi kumagoi alechi iguraisi tayo. Amugi baje ke banda Singapore to. Let us embrace this budget, let us support it. Against some with accountability in serikali because mwananchi kora kugere the issue of accountability. Ngobit accountability ak transparency. Ngobit transparency ak accountability kogo rahisi mwananchi agot kolipani tax komagere bangwan.
Mara nebo let kityo ko eng betab rani kagere kakotestai koletagei logoiwek maganut kobo iman anan mabo iman akobo ng'alekab tiletab aisurut eng employers. Mwaat kele tile aisurut eng kiboitinik kobate tomo koyokto chechongindonywa aisuruni koityi kibagenge noton nebo KRA. Mongen tos imaanisha ne nitok employers payslips chwaket nguno kowaktos kolen kakitilen ushuru amaker miteni koba komoswek chotok chenyolu. Matos imwane ku maybe CPA ako tos imwachi ne employers kasarta noton netile kiboitinik mushahara anan tile rabinik chotok chenyolu konyor eng arawet age tugul.
Amache amwaun ane ko accountant for a very long time. As an accountant, when you do deduction chebo rabinik ab wafanyikazi ko ketil chepkondok chotok as the employer. Mache ku chepkondok chotok katil pay nebo mfanyikazi ne ana ni 50,000 kubwa karibu 4,000 ana 5,000 shillings. Rabinik chotok ko mache chuk pa serikali chepkondok chotok. Got kitile chitab employer ne kaisir biik chepkondok ne kaisir mfanyikazi itile chepkondok ama tip chepkondok koba KRA kwa kabar economy nebo emoni. Kabar economy nebo emoni. The moment you have deducted, then it means majaguk chepkondo ja if rabinik chotok koba ano yokte chepkondo koba KRA, and that is why FCPA body kokamwa komie kole meche keyai kole institutional reforms in KRA gere ke building capacity nebo KRA konyor capacity KRA ko collectan chepkondok in everywhere ako in this budget ko ka consider kora institutional reformation nebo KRA so kabit konyor capacity KRA ko kwai chepkondok ing mfanyikazi nekakitile chepkondok. So ane agere as administrative challenges inside nebo KRA. If KRA is well empowered, then why would people deduct money amat ako kikonyo kine kele e-teams. The moment you are deducted ko notify the employer gole kage KRA gole kage tile ko chepkondok KRA kityo ko follow up. So these are issues chekikure administrative challenges chemeche kityo kenyor competent people cherana ne KRA chemeche kenyor biik komie che mekanishe gole ka implementan all these actions. But ngeweiten afternoon kekas the real budget and then we come back to do the analysis.
Okay. Okay, bising nato ko CPA Alton Kogo nenet kora ko tinye boisiet age noton nebo MSMEs inendet ko kandoindet anan director noton nebo North Rift eng kibagenge noton nebo MSMEs ko kounotok chitab Kalenjin kayarorwech mising kotinygei ak kerenyi kotinygei ak ng'alekab budget kanemunetab budget eng betutab rani yewendi kosomani CS noto nebo Treasury inendet ko John Mbadi eng koskoleng'utab betutab rani ako tinye biik chechang kamang'unet kole wendi kokoshin rirekwak mising ko chotok chetinyegei ak ng'alekab uchumi. Kokekas ng'alekab mwanik ko barak mising ako kang'alale mising FCPA anan CPA Elton Kogo kole nyolu eng biikab emet ko submiten anan ko ketile ushuru ako remiten koba kibagenge noto nebo KRA. Kounotok chitab Kalenjin amache awekten agoi studio noto nebo Nairobi asikobit kebe komoswek che terter kekas kora kele lene biikab emet kotinygei ak ng'alalutik chotok chebo betutab rani netinyegei ak ng'alekab budget. Kainenyu ko Isaac Kogei.
Chitab Kalenjin kenyoru kamung'et nenwach en Kass Mashinani yekiwege ketau ng'alalet ak tondenyon nemiten studio ak CPA Willy Koyachinet ko ng'omutyot nebo ng'alek chebo rabinik kounoto wendi inendet kokone kora ng'alalet neiborwech anan koyoiwech analysis nebo projections choto chebo budget nekibendi kesomani en koskoleng'utab rani.